Welcome back. The program is still Auto Clinic with the mechanic on Splash 105.5 FM Ibadan. And our discussion today focuses on things you need to know about the radiator coolant. I'll tell you this, if you are not watching us live right now on Facebook, you're missing out a whole lot because you get the audio visual, and I think that's more experiential when it comes to learning. So go on facebook.com and search for Splash FM 105.5 Ibadan, and you know what, watch and share with other people that you have on Facebook. You can also join us live on Instagram at Auto Clinic NG. We're streaming live as well at the moment, and of course you can drop questions should you have any on either of these platforms so that we can attend to them. Well, when we talk about coolant is about the lifeblood of the cooling system of your car. You see, a number of liquids can technically serve as an engine coolant. In the earliest days of cars, what you had was water, which was used as coolant in most parts. However, as much as it did the job well of moving heat, radiating it out of the engine, getting the heat to move to areas where it will be removed from the cooling system, it had a problem. When temperature dropped below freezing, water will actually become ice. And at that point, it is rendered immobile. So when temperature dropped below freezing, in those climes, what they had was the coolant became frozen. So now to keep it from turning into ice, chemicals were added to drop the freezing point. But these days, coolant is usually roughly a mixture of 50% of water and these antifreeze additives. Usually you have ethylene glycol and other chemicals that are used. Of course, you also have rust inhibiting agents which are added to it to prevent rust in the cooling system. So technically, antifreeze is just a part of the coolant. So when you see antifreeze, it's not the only thing that is it's not the only thing that is in the cooling system. It's just a part of that mixture for climes where they have freezing temperature. Now, the term that is usually used interchangeably, you find it used as coolant or antifreeze, whichever one you find. Now, the job of the coolant is not to cool down the engine of your car, and you need to understand that clearly now. The coolant is an agent that actually carries the heat that is generated inside the engine of the car, that's the combustion chamber, and moves it to the part of the car that is exposed for radiation of the heat to happen. So it moves the coolant is moved from the block of the engine, which is close to the combustion chamber, goes through the water pump, gets into the radiator, and while it is passing through the narrow tubings of the radiator, what happens is that most of the heat that it contains is dissipated, because of course you also have a radiator fan that is there that is drawing in cold air from the atmosphere or pushing hot air out of the system. So that's basically what a coolant will do. Now, if you hear a technician talk about checking your vehicle's coolant level, it doesn't mean that they are going to test the chemical composition of the coolant. They just want to know the level in there. This is something that you should be able to check as a person. However, there are ways to do it that you don't cause trouble for yourself. One of those ways would be that you do not open the radiator of your car every day. The radiator cap is not something to open every day. If you do that, you will damage the rubber sealing of the radiator cap. And when you do that, you are liable to overheating. At that point, there's no way you escape from that, the moment that is sealed. So you have a reservoir that is an overflow tank that's usually in most vehicles these days. When you look at that reservoir and the coolant level there is above minimum or it's getting to the maximum, it suggests to you that you have sufficient coolant in the radiator of the car. Now, in a situation where you are not sure, you allow the vehicle to cool very well and you check, because the radiator cap can also go bad. You can check on an annual basis, depending on how old your car is. You could check it on a quarterly basis. You could check it every time that your mechanic actually gets to do a service on the car. So you need to check to be sure that you have coolant in the system. Now, the internal combustion engines produce an incredible amount of heat, enough heat to damage the engine if you leave it unmitigated. And that is why coolant is very, very important. Now, what are the main functions of coolant? Really, it's to transfer heat and prevent engine damage caused by freezing or boiling. But heat can only be effectively transferred with liquid, which is why coolant is being used. So it's crucial to keep the coolant in the system from evaporating. Now, if the coolant boils over, vapor is formed, and that does not transfer heat very well. That's why you need to prevent overheating. Now, the engine metal can actually melt if overheating begins to happen. So you don't want your coolant doing that. So one other thing you have to ensure with coolant in your car is to know the potency. Because coolant not only cools down, allows the cooling down of your engine by dissipating the heat, it also protects metals and non-metallic elastomers like rubber and plastic parts in the engine from actually going bad. Also, it prevents rust. So should you be using water, you may not have an overheating situation yet, but when rust begins to build up in the system, overheating will definitely happen. So if you want to check your coolant, what are you supposed to do? It's simple. You can check it yourself. We've talked about that. Just check the reservoir. If reservoir is at normal level, that suggests that you should have sufficient in the radiator. But every time you go for a service, your mechanic can still go ahead and check by opening up the radiator in a safe way, just to be sure that the radiator cap is still doing its job. Now, what kind of coolant should you use in your vehicle? This is it. I've said it from the beginning that water is a coolant, but it's not recommended for your vehicle because water does not inhibit rust. Secondly, if you are using water that is treated from maybe bottles, sachet, and the rest, you would have a buildup of minerals deposit inside the cooling system of the car, so you don't use them. If you have to use water, you must use water in its purest form, which is either distilled water that you've gotten or direct water from rain, which hasn't more like touched anything to acquire any of the properties, or water from a flowing stream that's actually clean, or from a well that is untreated, depending on the water table you have around there. Best bet will be just go for distilled water. But that is supposed to just be a palliative. It's not something you should leave in your car forever. You're supposed to use that in a situation where you cannot find coolant. Now, what kind of coolant should you use? This is it. Oftentimes you have two types of coolant in the open market. You have the pink looking coolant, which is close to red, and you have the green one. Now, with the pink and the red one, you need to know this for a fact. They do not mix. So if you look inside the radiator of your car and you find the pink coolant and somebody tries to sell you the green coolant, please and please, I repeat, please and please do not use the green coolant to top off the red coolant, and do not use the red to top off the green. Either way, if these two different colors of coolant, be it orange, pink, red, ensure that if you intend to introduce that into the cooling system of your car, you totally flush what is inside of it out. The coolant should be flushed out. The water residue that may be there should also be gotten rid of. And the proper way to do it is to use a radiator flushing equipment. And the least you can do is to vacuum fill the system so that there are no air bubbles trapped in the system. So do not mix green and pink or green and red, orange, and do not mix any of it together. What happens is that when they mix like that, it begins to congeal, and that coagulant that you have as in the mixture forms tar, paste-like, sludge-like substance that's in the system. Your water pump cannot run that. That cannot be efficiently circulated in the system, and you're going to result to overheating. So in a situation where you are not sure of getting the type of coolant you have in your car, what you should use at that point is water. Get water, but ensure that that doesn't run for so long. What you should do with the water is flush it out as fast as possible so that you can put proper coolant in there. Water cannot replace coolant. Need to put that in mind. Now, if you want to call in and you have issues with your car, you want us to quickly run by it, we have a few minutes and the phone lines are open. 0809-155-1055, 0805-699-8678, and 0706-949-3000. I think we have a call. Let's take that. Oh, it's not okay. All right, 0809-155-1055, 0805-699-8678, 0706-949-3000. Hello, good morning.
Yes, hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, my name is Olamide from Makoto.
All right, Olamide, can you ask your question in 30 seconds?
Okay, yeah, my question is I could remember sometime a while I saw this indication on my dashboard.
Okay.
Maybe it's the exhaust that has issue. So I took it for scanning and I saw catalyst. I went back to the workshop and I realized I know the catalyst everything was okay.
Okay.
And the silence everything still seems okay, but I still have that light there.
So you have the check engine light on the car. It was scanned and it said catalyst. Right? The results suggested that you have a catalyst that is bad or something.
It just wrote catalyst.
Catalyst. All right. Yes. Just listen from the radio so I can guide you on where you can go from there. Thank you. Okay, so when you see catalyst, I'm sure that no fault code on a car will say catalyst. It will either tell you catalyst efficiency below threshold, telling you about bank 1 or bank 2, or it tells you that catalyst, it's mostly what you find is below threshold. And when you have a catalyst below threshold like that, it doesn't mean that the catalyst is absent in most cases. What you have is a situation where the catalyst is not doing its job as well as it should do it. Now, the catalyst being a mechanical component is not an electrical component. You may not be giving you the proper reading by saying it's inefficient. There are two sensors, upstream and downstream of the catalyst, before and after, that are, the upstream is monitoring fuel efficiency, the downstream is monitoring the catalyst efficiency. If that oxygen sensor itself is bad, it will report the catalyst as bad. Also, you should know that catalyst is something that over time, especially with the quality of fuel we have in this part of the world, deteriorates. And if it is deteriorating, it will tell you catalyst efficiency below threshold on a